So welcome to Abdallah Yousri, who is the Imam for the Ummah Mosque and Community Centre. It's my great pleasure to have him as this week's summer guest. Abdallah and I have met many times before, and we've always enjoyed each other's company and the things we share. And I'm always personally surprised about the many overlaps and the many things we have in common. And one of the things that Abdallah suggested we talk about was the fact that there are so many similarities between the Quran and the Christian Bible. Both faith traditions have a very strong tradition in about loving the other, even when the other is not like us. So my first question to Abdallah is, where do your first thoughts go when we talk about racism in this context, racism and faith?
Hello, Hubert. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for the great initiative. I know Hubert personally, and I enjoy being with him, and we had a couple events together between the mosque and the St. John's community. So thank you so much again for this opportunity, and I hope that we can build upon that in future as well when we can meet in person. I think, as you just mentioned, both traditions, we do both have very strong guidance to love each other and to care for one another. And in particular, when the first thing comes to my mind, one from the Quran, in particular, we have one verse, God speaking and saying, "O mankind." And in this verse, God is addressing mankind, not Muslims, not Christians. It's addressing mankind. "O mankind, we have created you from one pair, and we made you tribes and nations for you to know each other, for you to get to know each other." So in this verse, God is addressing mankind and also telling us about this divine wisdom for which He created us, or created human beings, or created mankind to be tribes and nations, and giving us this wisdom, this divine wisdom, why He made us with this, why He created these diverse communities, why He created all these tribes and nations in order for us to get to know each other. And He said as well, another verse, that if God, if He could have created all of us from one nation, He could have created all of us from the same nation or from the same tribe, but He did this for great wisdom to create this diverse world.
And it also makes me think how well that coincides with science. Science will tell us that there is no such a thing as a race. We all have the same DNA. If you look at the core of human beings, the way we've been put together, you cannot tell the difference between a black person and a white person. We are fundamentally the same. And I think that is reflected in our creation stories that says we come from this common denominator.
Yes, there is no differences, and that's why this is a common thing between. This is a common kind of guidance, divine guidance between Islam and Christianity, and the story as well is very profound. In the Quran, when we preach, we say that the essence of the racism actually goes back to one verse or to one sentence in the dialogue between God and Satan. When God asked him to prostrate to Adam, he refused, and he said, "I will not prostrate to someone or to a creation that I believe that I am better than him." So we believe that the essence of racism actually goes back to this sentence, which is the arrogance.
And I think you touched upon the core root of racism, the idea that one group of people is superior to another group of people for whatever
Yes.
reason.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunately, it's almost everywhere. It's not limited to white people.
Yes.
It is almost universal. How would you think that as a person of faith and a faith leader, what is our role in addressing that?
Yes. I would like to recall an incident happened at the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and all messengers of God. It's kind of giving us the light how to deal and how to address this issue. This incident is very close to my heart, actually. Prophet Muhammad, one of his closest companions was an African slave called Bilal. Prophet Muhammad, he chose him over others to appoint him as the man he does call to the prayer. Every single daily prayer, he's the man calling for the prayer, which is very unique position in Islam and in the first mosque. So Bilal, he was a very close companion to Prophet Muhammad, and one of the companions, uh, at some point, he had a kind of disagreement with Bilal, and he said to him, "You, the son of a black woman." He said this to him. So Bilal went to Prophet Muhammad, and he was complaining about what the other companion said to him. So the Prophet Muhammad, he was very mad, and they could see the mad at his face. And he said to this companion, Abu Dhar, may Allah be pleased with him as well, he said to him, actually, you still have this ignorance in your heart. The ignorance of the people they came before Islam. There is still this ignorance and arrogance in your heart. This is a sign that there is still arrogance and ignorance in your heart. And he was very angry, and he was very also strict dealing with this and condemning what happened and putting this as a kind of path for us. And the last guidance, and the last, I would say, the last sermon the Prophet Muhammad, we have from Prophet Muhammad, he was saying, this is the biggest, considered the biggest gathering in his lifetime with his followers. He said to his followers very clearly that there is no superiority for a non-Arab over an Arab. And there is no superiority for a white man or a white person over a black person. There is no superiority for a black person over a white person, except by righteousness and the good deeds. So, from these two scenes or incidents in the life of Prophet Muhammad, I would say that we should stand up, and we should do our best to enjoy the good and stop the evil. And as you said, this is sadly is part of different communities in different countries. It is not just about one country or another. It's not about one religion or another, or one community or another. It is actually, sadly, it is part of different communities. But still, there is this ignorance and this arrogance in the heart, and that's why I wanted to bring this. So to say that we need to fight this wherever it is, wherever we see this, and whenever we see this. This happened before at the time of the Prophet, and it's happening now in different countries, and it is happening actually in our communities, whether between Muslims or Christians and Jewish, between the community itself. We do see this, and we can see this, but our role is to act, not just to act like to be blind when you see these things, or you should kind of generalize these issues or these incidents. You should deal with it and try your best to stop this evil, and to kind of stop this, as we say these days, the systematic racism.
And I think you touched on an important thing. You said it's about teaching. It's about naming things.
Yes.
We can only stop it, I think, by naming it, by calling
Yeah.
it out. On the one hand, and on the other hand is by educating ourselves and others
Yes.
that there's an other way of doing things. That there's a third way of dealing with one another, of living in harmony with one another.
Yes.
And personally, I think, and that's my personal experience, the best way of educating yourself is go to the other and get to know them.
Yes.
And that's often the hardest thing, isn't it?
Of course. Yeah. 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 And actually, the more you, this is the problem, that the more you sit down and the more you reach out, the more you understand and realize that you really do not know anything about the other. And there is a lot you can do, and there is a lot for you to learn and to understand about others, and about other faiths, and about other groups, other communities,
Yeah. So that, and as a consequence, I think, and that's also referring back to that mosaic we talked about. If you say that one piece doesn't belong in there, you take away from the whole. It is at your own detriment. It is in your disadvantage. So racism, you might say, is not only damaging to others, it also damages yourself, your own soul, your own being.
Yeah. Yeah. This I have read the verse in the Bible I mentioned to you, which is when Lord talking to Samuel, and he's saying to him that Lord does not look to your outer appearance. Uh, he does look into your hearts and your actions. I found exactly the same words in the narrations of the Prophet, exactly the same words, and actually was very happy to see this kind of similarity even in the words itself. And this is the beauty of getting to know each other, and this is the beauty of educating yourself. This is the first time for me to encounter this verse. I found in in the narration of the Prophet Muhammad, I found he's saying exactly the same words. He's saying God Almighty does not look to your bodies or your appearance. He does look into your hearts and your deeds and actions. So exactly the same words, with the same concept, with the same guidance, addressing this issue that we are suffering from, as you said, different communities in different countries.
And you are referring to the story that we know in the Bible as the prophet Samuel looking for the first king of Israel, and he picks David, and there's that little runt of a guy who is not that strong, and who's chosen as the king. And God says, don't look at the outside. What counts is on the inside. That's where you meet the true values that you need. Interesting that both stories are almost literally the same in both faith traditions.
Yeah, but sadly, we do have a lot to do, and there is a lot of deficiencies in our communities, in our countries, and in different places around the world. You feel this happiness when you see that this is mutual or the same guidance, but you also feel sad that why we are still suffering from this issue while we almost agree on the same principles, So this means that there is a lot we have to do, and there is a lot of actions we have to partake.
And we have to learn a lot from one another.
Yes.
For one thing, if I remember years ago how surprised I was to see that how many similarities there were between the Bible and the Quran. It is the same stories, slight variations, but basically the same stories.
Yeah.
Nobody taught me that.
Yeah, I remember when you suggested to talk about the story of Noah between the Quran and Christianity, and I said, if we go this way, actually we can go through all the stories of all the prophets, because when you look to the story of Abraham, for example, it's identical between the Quran and Christianity. When you look to all the stories, the story of creating Adam and Eve as well. All the stories of the prophets, you're going to find it almost identical, with some pieces here, with some pieces over there, with the same goddess. Yes.
So it is our choice what we focus on. Do we focus on the similarities, or do we focus on the differences?
That's perfect. Yeah.
And I think the answer is obvious. We need to focus on what we share, on what we have in common. And that goes back to the fact that we come from the same, we have the same DNA. We have the same common denominator.
Yeah, the same father, the same DNA, and it is a miracle, as mentioned in the Quran, as one of the signs of His power, of the power of God Almighty, that He has created you with different, created the heavens and the earth, and He created you with these diverse colors and languages. This is considered as one of His the signs of His power and the signs of His mercy.
It's one of God's great gifts to us, and who are we to reject that?
Yeah.
I think that's a wonderful point in our discussion to wrap it up for now. It is. I have the same frustration in this discussion as we had with the previous guests. Is we've only started our discussion, our conversation. We could easily talk for another hour or 2 hours, and we will at some point, as soon as we can meet in person again over a good cup of coffee.
Of course.
And until then, I wish you all the best. Blessings on your work and blessings on your community.
Thank you, Hubert, for this great opportunity. You're always suggesting great events and great initiatives. Blessings to you and peace to you and your family and your community.
Thank you very much. I hope to meet you soon in person. Bye-bye.
Thank you.